This is really interesting because I was listening to a podcast yesterday where they were talking a bit about, from a biological perspective, what humans crave. And growth is one of the things that we crave. Now, yeah, like you said, we're currently, our entire society, like globally is built on, or not globally, but amongst what's the word I'm looking for? You know how you got like it's relative or it's what's the other one?
Absolute.
Yeah, or absolute. So we're looking for absolute growth where everything just continues to grow. Whereas if we don't need that on an individual level, obviously we experience reality based on our own perspective. So I could feel growth that, how do I put this? You don't need everything to keep rising. You just need everything relative to yourself to keep rising. Now, the thing is, you'll get into situations where, and he sort of used this example, but he didn't really elaborate on it in the way that I was thinking about it, where imagine you got two people in separate rooms, right? And you've got temperature control over one room. One person's cold, so growth to them is heating up the room. Whereas the other person, maybe their room's too hot, so growth to them is actually lowering the temperature of them. So what you could do is you could transfer between them and they'll both be feeling growth relative, but really it's a steady state. Absolutely. So relative to each individual, they think that growth is occurring, but it's actually, as part of the entire system, it's just a steady state. And so I was thinking, okay, that's an interesting idea. If you could do that on a global level or on a country level, whatever our society, whatever our scope was, if we could maintain it where the system, the country itself is in steady state, but each individual feels as if they're continually growing, then you've got a society where everyone is kind of, their needs are met and they feel like they're moving towards something. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So I think what you're trying to say is that the individual can grow relative to their own perspective, but as a collective, we should be careful about the concept of growth. Because it's kind of, maybe it's not necessarily the growth that's the problem, it's the reliance that there needs to be continual growth in order for our current systems to work. So it's the concept of capital that's the problem, I feel. So like I agree, we all grow, but we bank our future, what that actually means. So growth doesn't always mean a good thing. Like, maybe growing pains, you're growing, but it's a painful situation or whatever. So, like growth happens, but I think what we do now is we bank on it. We bank our future decisions on some form of capital that we've grown from our past. And I think that banking on it and having capital there is more the problem than the actual growth itself. And I think what you're doing there is you're basically separating, saying the system doesn't have growth. There's an equilibrium, but that doesn't mean the elements within the people within the system can't feel like they're growing at different points, because some people will grow, some people will go backwards, and that's kind of what we want the system to do. But as a whole, we want to keep it fairly balanced.
Correct. Even as you were saying that, I was thinking that growth is actually a terrible word, or maybe there could be a better word for it. And I would say change is probably what we were looking for. You're not necessarily looking for growth. You're just looking for change. When we get into a steady state, I always compare it to velocity versus acceleration. You don't feel when you're continually going at the same speed. What you feel is the change between the speeds. So I kind of feel it's that same way with everything in life and everything that we feel. We don't feel when we're in the steady state that we feel the change. So you just need a consistent change, and you want that change to be in a way that is beneficial or desirable to the individual. And so, like I said, you can have the system as a whole is in balance. So you're using the same resources over and over again. You're just reallocating to people depending on what they need, the change that they require at any particular time.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to describe it. I like the fact that you remove growth and you do change, because I think what growth assumes is that it's better. Whereas change is it's not better or it's worse. It's different. And I think that's what we all strive, isn't it? Like something different. That's why people go and buy a new phone or go and buy a new car or go do those things, is because internally they're desiring some change in their life. And they're not taking it in other ways that probably the cheap way to do it today is to buy something to get out of it. But that change can happen anywhere. But I think that the individuals, there's a desire to change based on what they know, what they've learnt. So I like the fact that you've changed growth into change. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, it's more like they need to be continually stimulated with novel things. And novel, again, isn't absolute. It's not based on everything they've experienced in their life. It's just what haven't they experienced in a while that would give them that good feeling. It's similar to, you can watch a movie now today, say, for example. It's like, oh, okay, that was a good movie. I enjoyed that or whatever. Now, if you watch it again tomorrow, you won't get the same kind of reaction from it because you remember it. It's fresh in your mind. But if you wait a decade, let's say, and then you watch it again, you're like, oh, yeah, it may not be just as potent as it was the first time, but it'll still be a very high level because it's been a long time since you've experienced that. And so we can do the same thing, because if we've got enough resources that you've got enough time between experiencing them, then it should be fine.